No, good.
No, you're good.
All right, I'm David. That's Ken. He's your new guy. He's going to be drinking in all this information so he can rattle it off soon. He's changing out one of the baffles right now. But essentially, you guys are using the turbojet nozzle, which is what? How many people know how to use this?
It's adjustable gallonage.
Adjustable gallonage, right? How many of you have ever done that? Dial it up or down. So we have two hands. I don't mean, that's usually how it is, though. So this, it gives you as the nozzleman, you're in control, right? You now can dial it up or down. You don't have to worry about what the pump operator's doing. So if you need more water and it's set at 125, dial it up to 150 or 200. Now you're not going to get that flow out of there, but you're going to get a little bit more because he didn't change the pump pressure. But the other bad thing, what's a drawback to this? Good news is you can dial it up if it's kicking. You know, if it's hot, you need some water, dial it up. What's the drawback?
You dial down, could be accidentally or somebody does it.
You dial it down accidentally, or what is this normally set at on your apparatus now?
Coming off ours, 95.
What was this one set at when I looked at it though initially just a minute ago, off the front bumper?
Probably 125.
200. So, and that's the thing. Like most people, unless you have an SOP or SOG in place to say, hey, I need this set at 95 or 125. These things are usually across the board. A lot of departments around the country. This has been Akron's bread and butter since 1969 when it was patented, and it's a great nozzle if you know how to use it. So there's a little more training involved. But if you don't and you leave it set at 95, you can pump 300 psi to it, and you're not going to get that much. You're not going to get that much water out of it because you can only put so much water through an orifice, right? It's physics. So essentially, that's that. So that's a turbojet for you. A little bit more training, but as the nozzleman, you have control. The next one is more of a fixed orifice nozzle. So a fixed orifice nozzle is sometimes referred to as a fixed gallonage. The fixed gallonage is not necessarily fixed gallonage, it's just a fixed orifice. So this happens to be a 185 at 50, so it would match like a 15/16 smoothbore. But your 185 at 50, if you want more water out of it, by all means, you can get more water out. Just, hey, crank up the pressure at the pump and you can get more out of it. So if you pump it at 75 psi at the nozzle, you may be looking at like 220 GPM. You then pump it at 100, you're looking at, it's like 245, something like that. It's a lot of water. But, so with every action, there's a reaction, right? So if you pump that up and you're getting it out of there, you better be ready to hang on because it's going to be flowing some water and that reaction force is coming at you. But a fixed orifice nozzle, you have that ability. You just have to now radio back. It's not, you don't have any control. So the only control you really have on that nozzle is open, closed, fog, straight stream, and flush. If you want anything more, radio back, hey, I need a little bit more, or dial it down, we're in overhaul. So this, like I said, a 185 at 50 is kind of designed for 15/16. So what we're doing today is some low pressure stuff. The hose you have currently is not designed for low pressure. You try and use low pressure. How many of you guys heard of, it's called nozzle whip? You heard of that? Don't say it's nozzle whip. I blame the hose people. It's hose whip. That's what's really causing it. There's not enough velocity of water through there to keep the hose from from collapsing on itself, essentially. So that's why you get this kind of action. So your hose, it works fine now with 100 psi nozzle, but when you try and go to low pressure, that's one of the things you're gonna have. What also happens with low pressure, you have nozzle whip, but what also happens with that? Kinks, right? So you're getting a lot of kinks. You need a bunch of people, dragging it around, ironing it out. That said, so that's why you're looking at some of the key FDNY and I think the key Combat Ready is what you have out there right now. And those are the higher grade hoses designed for low pressure nozzles. So it's got thicker walls. I don't know all the ins and outs of how they build it, but it's a 1.88 inside diameter. It's a lot of water. The FDNY is around 150 to 185 is the sweet spot. The Combat Ready, 185 and above is its sweet spot. So it's good stuff, and it's made to be used with low pressure nozzles. So it's kind of their system, working hand in hand. If you have one and don't have the other, it's kind of like you're wasting your money on one or the other one. The other nice thing about going to low pressure, How many of you guys used low pressure before? How'd you like it?
Love it.
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
Because you get a bunch of water, not much, you get lots of volume, low pressure.
Yeah. I know what you're trying to say. You're almost there. Say it. That's it. That's what you're trying to say. Yeah. Nozzle reaction.
I was getting there.
You were almost had it. I'm proud of you. Nozzle reaction. So that is the biggest thing. So with like, if you guys are trying to flow on your turbojets right now, the rule of thumb on a turbojet, or not even a turbojet, 100 PSI nozzle, half of what you're flowing is your reaction force. So 150 GPM, if that was your target, and that's what it was set at, half of that is 75, right? So 75 pounds of reaction force. A 150 at 75, the formula is a little bit different. There's square roots, there's something to the second power, there's a little bit more to it, so I just have it memorized, but it's a 150 at 75, you're going to be getting about 64 pounds of reaction force. So you drop about 10 pounds of reaction force. A 150 at 50, you're getting 54 pounds of reaction force. So you drop like 20 pounds of reaction force coming back at you. Now that may not mean a lot for him at the end with the way his arms are, but with me, little arms like this, you know, it comes on technique, that kind of things. So, but that's what the other nice thing about going to low pressure is your reaction force. And now your discharge pressure on your pump is now that much less, more or less. Because theoretically, 150 GPM is 35 per 100 foot friction loss, right? So 30, what's your nozzle formula for, what's your pump discharge pressure formula? What do you need to get your pump discharge pressure? You need what?
Friction loss.
Friction loss plus what?
Plus 100.
Well, that's your nozzle pressure. So nozzle pressure, friction loss, and what else? What's the last one?
Length of hose.
Yep, that goes into your friction
You
loss.
also got your elevation.
This guy's on fire down there. What is it then, by the way?
What, the elevation?
Yeah, what's the rule of thumb?
I mean, it's 5 PSI per 4.
Per floor, per story. There you go. Way to go. You get to flow the nozzle first today.
No.
All right, so that's what it is. So theoretically, with a 150, with your standard hose, 35 per 100 foot. So you got 200 foot line, right? So 35 and 35 is 70, plus now 100. So that's why theoretically you need 170 PDP to get 150 gallons a minute. You take it now to a 75 PSI nozzle. Now 35 and 35, 70 plus 75. Right, 145. Now a 170 plus 50, 120. So now you just dropped 50 PSI on the pump discharge. Now, will you ever need to be that high? If that 170, do you think that would be right on the money, or you think it's overkill?
That's what we get here for.
Theoretically, 170 is what you're going to get. Do you think that's overkill, or do you think that's going to be right on money? It's probably overkill. Why?
Just because of the efficiency of the hose and the nozzles.
You're right. So that right there is exactly what it is. So that formula, that coefficient that you're looking at, we tell you 35 per 100 is based on 1.75 diameter. It's no bigger. So what is most of those out there?
1.88.
1.88, 1.8, 1.77. So depending on what you have, and I didn't take a look at what you're using, it could be a little bit bigger. So you may only need 160 to get it. You may actually need 170 to get there. It just depends on your hose. It's different everywhere. And if you have a different section of hose mixed in with your other, that's even worse. So there's a lot to this that you're gonna do. So we're gonna flow your turbojet first, see what we actually need to be at. Maybe it's only 1 for 1, so 1 GPM for 1 PSI. So maybe it only is like 150 PSI that you need at the pump discharge. And so last but not least, so this is the assault, was the tip, but you guys were looking at a break apart. So when you spin this tip off, now you have an integrated smooth bore. So instead of, do that, so instead of something like this, where this is your 7/8, you can just have a regular smooth bore tip on here, that's actually integrated in. Now, you're going to look out here, and I call it parking lot firefighting. Your stream's going to look a lot better with a longer tip. Why?
Oh, because it's going to shape it.
Physics. It's shaping it. It gets that turbulence out. It's going to look a little bit worse if we're out here parking lot firefighting. But if you're trying to go, what's your standard room of contents fire?
20 feet.
20 feet? 20 feet, that little guy's not going to make a difference. mean, it's going to
Take up
guarantee.
you a little bit.
What's that?
Will that tilt through on there?
Just look at it.
It will, but it's not actually really designed for that, because it takes it down to 15/16, and then if you look at this, it goes back out and then back down, so your stream gets a little bit stirred up, your turbulence. So it's not really designed for that. So that's why you'd almost have like a regular shutoff, and then you can throw on either a 150 at 50 tip or a 160 at 50 tip. This is 7/8, 161 GPM at 50 PSI. So you could match them. So now if you want to be a smoothbore line, this one, and a fog on this one, great. If you want to be the break apart, you can do that. The break apart, keep in mind, is going to be a little bit more training involved because people forget that the fog tip will come off. So that's the only aspect of that you need to probably be cognizant of. Whereas if you've got, this is also a break apart, it just doesn't have the integrated smoothbore waterway. This one's just a regular shot. So now you can put either one on. It doesn't matter. It's just not into one piece like that.
Is that a quick break?
How much quicker do you want? You shut the line down, you take the nozzle off, you put it in your pocket.
I love it. We can extend the line with that.
So everybody brings up the extending of lines. Now this is the question I ask you right back at you. Not trying to be mean, but how often have you ever extended a line?
Twice.
In your career, right?
In my career, yes.
So that's
very short career. Wrong guy.
But and that's.
You should ask anybody else.
But that's what you want to ask, is that how many times you break and extend, because a lot of people do like the aspect of breaking and extending, but they don't do it. And so if it's there, the capability is there, but it can be just another training aspect that you have to, know about, because a lot of people forget that fog tip will come off, and it doesn't come off then.
It never comes off.
Yeah. And so sometimes it's maybe better to have a regular fog and a smoothbore one-on-one. Either way, you're pumping the discharge pressure is the same pressure.
See, I think
because you're going to match.
On Chief, on engine 1, I think the break apart is awesome.
It's awesome.
Great for engine 1. For engine 3, I think you can put a smoothbore in a low pressure fog nozzle. It depends on the setup. But for engine 1, I think it would be perfect.
Having both those lines be able to break apart would be awesome.
Yeah, for engine 1.
So you've got that ability. So that's what we're going to do today, though. So we've got the ability from a 150 at 50. I got a 161 at 50, the baffle, and then a 185 at 50. Those are going to be your 3 main flows for the most part, low pressure, because like we said before, the average person kind of hang on to about 60 to 70 pounds of reaction force. That's roughly it. A 185 at 50 is going to give you about 69 pounds of reaction force. A 161 at 50 is about 62. A 150 at 50, you're down to the 54 that we talked about before. So, and all these formulas are in the back of the book if you guys want to actually go through them and do math later. I know how exciting that'll be, but yeah. So yeah. So and you start reading your NFPA 1962, by the way, too, because now what do you need to do every time you do hose testing, right? You do it once a year.
Yeah, once a year.
What do you need to do now? You need to flow test and pressure test your appliances and your nozzles, right? Yeah. So that's a good read, though. But yeah, so this is what we're gonna do. We got a bunch of stuff to play with today. And any questions? Did I cover everything? Clear as mud.
Clear as mud.
Yeah. Get it? All right. So I've got.
For the most part.
So we've got the flow meter hooked up directly to the discharge side of the truck. So your flows, whatever you're flowing here, it's going to be the same as what's down there. It's just the difference in your pressure, your nozzle pressure, your friction loss. So we're going to see what your hose is capable of. We'll see what the FDNY is, and then the combat ready. Good?
Hey, on that combat ready,
Yes,
can you try that 210 and 50?
Yeah, I don't have, yeah.
I just like to see